In the Volume 9 trailer that we got just a couple days ago, we saw Ruby Rose confronted by a younger version of herself, from a time when she still held to the ideals of becoming a hero, before the world was as chaotic and as dark as she realized, before she was introduced to Salem, before the fall of Atlas, before the fall of Haven, before the fall of Beacon, while she still had her childhood innocence. And if we are left to presume that that is the trial that each of the characters are going to go through, being confronted by a younger version of themselves who still held to the ideals that they may have had to throw away at some point, or the goals that they have not been able to achieve throughout the years that they thought they would be able to, then think about what that means for Neopolitan. It is very likely that in Volume 9, Neo is not just going to have an identity crisis, she's going to have an identity conflict. For the past few volumes in RWBY, Neo has been consumed by rage. She has been focused solely on the goal of going after Ruby, of holding someone responsible for Roman's death. The one person, the one thing that matters to Neo throughout her life. And if there is going to be a trial that she is going to undergo in the Ever After, if the tree is going to manifest itself as a younger version of Neo, Neo is going to be confronted by that rage that she feels. That is the only thing on her mind. And yet, back when she was known as Trivia Vanille, her desires were very different. She wanted to be free. She wanted to be accepted for who she is. And at the time, that manifested itself in the version of her that we know now, the version we came to know as Neopolitan. I think we are going to see the two different personalities of Trivia Vanille and Neopolitan in conflict with one another. That by the end of the volume, we're going to see a completely different Neo than when we started. In fact, Neopolitan may not exist by the end of the volume. In fact, we may now have Trivia Vanille once again. I expect that she would still have a lot of the mannerisms that we've come to know and love about Neopolitan, but through this conflict, I think she will eventually be able to let go of her rage. If she's unable to shed the Neopolitan that exists now, what is left for her? She gives into her rage, and it leads her to her own demise. That is pretty much the fate that awaits Neopolitan at this point in time. She has no one. Cinder has abandoned her. She is just full of rage, and there's nowhere really for her to go, except to let go of that hate. And I think part of her will be unable to do that. We don't exactly know what the powers of the Ever After are going to have, if Neo's rage is strong enough to actually cause a fracture, and especially with Neopolitan's semblance, have a very real image conjured of Neopolitan. So she actually exists in two different states, that we have both Trivia Vanille and Neopolitan existing at the same time and in conflict with one another. If that is the case, then I think Trivia, as I've theorized before, will be able to find comfort in Jean, at least when Jean gets freed from his own trial, because he's going to be grief-stricken and sorrowful, as I theorized in a video earlier, and if that is true, then Jean won't exactly be himself at the beginning of the volume, and it might take until the second half of the volume before Neo can actually encounter Jean and have that meaningful interaction. Before that, I think a lot of her rage is still going to be channeled at RWBY. There's probably, or possibly, going to be some fights that break out before that and some conflicts that arise, but when she gets to that point of the tree giving her that trial, confronting her with the failings that she has had, she will be confronted by the rage that she feels, but also the grief that she should be feeling. One thing we've never really gotten from Neopolitan is the idea that she's actually taken the time to properly grieve for Roman's death. And it is that confrontation with both the grief and the rage that I think will cause that fracture. Trivia will feel the sadness, but Neo will still feel the rage. And I don't know if those two emotions would react differently with the trial of the Ever After, if it would actually fracture Neo's personality, so we have Neopolitan and Trivia, that it would actually be an identity conflict, that Neo, with her rage, would see Trivia as weak, as someone who doesn't see eye to eye, and Neo might actually shed Trivia like an old coat, while Trivia sheds Neo like an old coat. There might be a very interesting dynamic that arises from this trial that is given through the Ever After, and Trivia would be the one that ends up being accepted by Team RWBY, by Jean, and the one that ends up making it out of the Ever After, whereas the Neopolitan that we know now, the ruthless, well, killer that she is, because she was very much willing to stab Yang back in Volume 2, and when she was helping out Cinder, well, we know that she played a pretty big hand in the fall of Atlas. She helped with the fall of Beacon, so Neo's definitely got some blood on her hands. And this could also play into the Alice in Wonderland inspiration, where Neopolitan and Trivia being separate, the Neopolitan portion of her personality could represent the Mad Hatter, whereas Trivia could represent something else, perhaps, or just be a member of Team RWBY. In fact, it may even happen that Trivia makes it out, and Neopolitan is someone that stays behind in the Ever After. There's plenty of different ways that this could play out. But if those two personalities are separated out, then it would be a lot easier to forgive Trivia Vanille versus Neopolitan, where she doesn't have those murderous tendencies and things of that nature. Now, I know that myself and many others love Neopolitan as she is, and I really don't want her to change, but she definitely needs to go through some growth. She needs to let go of this hate, and I think this is going to be a good way to go about it. Now, maybe it won't be the direct fracture of her personality into literally two different beings, one being Trivia Vanille, one being Neopolitan. It might be more of a conflict that takes place within her mind, and the outcome would be that Trivia is the personality that comes to the surface, the one that sought freedom, the one that sought to be accepted. If she does join up with Team RWBY and Jean, she can find that acceptance. It's not going to come right away, don't get me wrong. Jean would likely be the one to accept her more willingly, but Yang especially is not going to be as easygoing with that front, considering that Neo really almost murdered her on more than one occasion, actually. So, you know, there's going to be some tough times ahead, but I think ultimately, I hope ultimately, that Neo or Trivia will end up joining the protagonist's side by the end of this. Even if some of those more violent tendencies remain in Trivia, I have a feeling they probably won't, but it would be worthwhile to give her the chance to redeem herself. Because in the world of RWBY, especially with the state that the world is in now, Salem's the one enemy that matters. If there are people on Salem's side, or criminals or enemies that are willing to join the fight against Salem, you openly accept them. You don't, you know, push them aside because of their past transgressions. You can hold them accountable for that after Salem's taken care of. You don't want Neo to stay an enemy. She has a very tricky semblance. She might even have some insight into some of Salem's plans, having worked with Cinder for that long, and just from the talents that she has gained throughout her life, she would be a very useful ally. And that is going to be what is significant. That is going to be what really helps Trivia feel fulfilled. She will be an ally, not an asset. She'll be treated like a person, and that will give rise to the loyalty and the feeling of acceptance that the young Trivia Vanille has always wanted. And I think that is what ultimately is going to happen with Neo throughout Volume 8. She may no longer be known as Neopolitan, but she will still be, at her heart, at her core, the character that we have come to know and love. And although we haven't really seen much of Neo in the Volume 9 teaser or trailer thus far, just that one scene where she is very much angry, still focused on that rage, she uses her semblance to transform into RWBY as she has done before, showing that RWBY is still her target. I think that that rage and letting go of it is going to be her main story point throughout Volume 9. And it's also a pretty good indicator for the fact that we were given the novel Roman Holiday in September of 2021, after Volume 8, but before the release of Volume 9. meaning that it is a way for us to be introduced to Neo's backstory, reveal that she was once known as Trivia Vanille, give us that insight into her previous motivations, her previous desires, and that is going to come to fruition in Volume 9. That's my thinking at least, but let me know what yours are down in the comments below. Do you think that it is very likely that Neo is going to be going through this trial confronted with her rage, and the version of herself that comes out at the end is going to be Trivia Vanille? Or perhaps she'll be given even a different name from the Ever After in some way, shape, or form. That she'll cast both names aside, not wanting to be associated with the Vanille name, and she's no longer going to be Neopolitan. Maybe it will be something else. I'm really curious to see what this volume holds for our characters that have been transported to the Ever After, and Neo is definitely at the top of that list, because it's something we've been waiting to see happen for the longest time. Her break away from Cinder and finally find some place to be accepted. And this is likely going to be the time for it to happen. So let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Do you think, well, that it will be a conflict just inside Neo's mind, or do you kind of hope, similar to I do, that we will see two different versions of Neo manifest themselves in the overall world? That there will be Trivia Vanille and Neopolitan that might actually be in conflict with one another. That Neo will be going after RWBY, Trivia will be accepted by Team RWBY and Jean, and there's going to be some conflict of the rise until there's an overall acceptance that both are actually Neo, and, well, the person at the end is going to be a combination of both of them, maybe taking the name of Trivia Vanille at the end. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the idea. It seems kind of likely in my mind, but I would love to know your thoughts as well. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe and join the Guild of the Eternal Flame. Follow me on Twitch at PhoenixKnight7, link in the description below. I stream every Tuesday and Saturday, so if you want to chat RWBY live while watching some video games, make sure to tune in there. And I'll see you guys in the next video.